Hello and welcome to the April 19th, 2023 WORT Board of Directors meeting. We're holding it over Zoom. It's 7:02 p.m., almost 7:03. And two people are not present from the board, Stu and Amber. I'm calling the meeting to order. Has everyone had a chance to look at the agenda? Are there any additions or corrections?
I would just say before we start, I would like to point out that it was a busy month for me, and I actually hadn't had the time to submit the finance report for last month, the notes from it. So it's missing currently, and honestly, I don't think I even did that well of a record of keeping the last month's meeting minute notes. I do have this month, but last month don't exist, unfortunately.
I just added a link. I put them in the board folder, and I added a link to that for the agenda. So,
Okay.
But you can give a report verbally here.
This month I didn't assemble them. I will assemble them, which you saw that I sent them to you beforehand while I was doing something else. But that's the only thing I want to point out, that this month will be there, but last month's aren't. I don't. I wasn't able to.
Well, do you want to give us a short financial outline, or would you like me to?
Of currently right now, or last month's March, like April's or March's?
February is the one we just finished in
March.
It would be March. Yeah, I don't.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, I couldn't give you a March.
We're not done with April yet.
I couldn't give a March.
The last one that Mary Joy has done is February. So
what I mean to say is that the meeting notes from March's
understood.
Meeting, okay, yep.
I wanted to add something at the DEI portion of the meeting. It's not in the notes.
Thank you. I made a mistake, and I didn't ask for approval of the March draft minutes of the board meeting.
That's why I mentioned it for if anyone, if this is like the point of approval, that's why it's missing. If anyone questions that for the approval of that.
Okay. Very good. Are there any additions or corrections to the March WRT board meeting minutes that were in the drive? Hearing none, I will consider those adopted, as well as the agenda. I don't have any communications from the public to add. And there were no executive committee actions since the last meeting. So this is where we get into the financial and treasurer's report. We're in good shape. The report that Susan made on the listener sponsor development report, we'll get to at that point, but financially we're still in good shape. So we just had a finance committee meeting at 4 o'clock today. So we didn't take any new actions. We're still concerned about our automatic monthly donor processing, and we're looking for alternatives, but haven't made any changes yet. So
some add-ons to that. I would like to say that all of our documents from the audit have been submitted. There are a few follow-up questions from our auditor, but by the end of the week, we're anticipating that everything should be taken care of. And then we should get our first draft in May. So our current plan is to discuss that draft. We're anticipating it's going to come after our May finance committee meeting, and we'll have a report ready to discuss in June, and then we'll report that at the June board of directors meeting, the results of the audit and any sort of recommendations or fixes that are necessary to make. We did get the extension approved for the tax return, so that's been approved. So that part's all set, and we're currently looking into the issue with the donors and the banking So we'll have that, we'll have some information in a spreadsheet ready to go for the next meeting once we finish up some of these calls and have a more clear idea of how to compare between our banking options.
Correct. So once the audit gets done, then that leads us to two more things. One is the IRS 990, which Kai just talked about, and the other is the Corporation for Public Broadcasting report, which Doug does. So, but those are dependent on getting the audit done first. So, and then the state of Wisconsin tax form, or the reporting form called the 1952. So there were three things that happen after we get the audit done. So there's only one item in our reports that require board action. The reports are all good and noteworthy. Tom is here, but I will steal his thunder and say that Tom and Laura, we've received the new audio over IP equipment, except for just a few pieces, and Laura set it up on the bench and made audio go through it and make lights blink and everything. So progress is being made. Susan points out that a Wegner representative will come to the board meeting once everything is done. Yes, so that will be a formal presentation to the board meeting once the audit is complete. They'll send us a draft report, and we look at that and make sure that everything is as we expect it. And then once I don't know who approves that and makes it go, but I think it's the finance committee. And then we make arrangements with Wegner to come and make a short, or attend on Zoom now to make a short presentation that says, here we go. I've asked Wegner if they could, they've done in the past a long range graph of the performance of WORT over like the last 7 or 8 years. And they think they can do that as just part of the audit because they already have that information on file. So that'll give us a good long range indication of where we're going in terms of our finances. Tom, did I miss anything important on the technology and engineering committee stuff?
You say that like there's ever anything important in there.
You didn't ask for money that we need to approve, basically, is what I'm saying.
I've been spending too much as it is with A over IP equipment.
Mm-hmm. All right. Doug's report, the biz dev report is in. I don't see any action items on that. There's all sorts of great news there. Volunteer appreciation party coming up at the Parched Eagle. This whole week is volunteer appreciation week, I guess. So the listener sponsor development report is in. Susan points out that our winter pledge drive did better than we have done in a pledge drive in years. Thank you, Susan. Do you want to say anything, Susan?
Sorry, I had to unmute. I mean, I know that pledge drives fall under my supervision, but I want to say I have no idea why this pledge drive was so successful. And it's one thing that I do want to try and figure out by looking at some of the analytics. We finished the on-air portion. So as I'm not sure all of you know, there's really 3 weeks to our winter and fall pledge drives. 2 weeks are on the air, and there's 1 week afterwards where we're still actively fundraising online, but not on air. And so we finished the regular part, the 2 weeks of on air, at $92,000. And then the online only that took place the week afterwards, where the hosts are not pledge wrapping, that part brought in another $15,000, which is a pretty high amount. So I'm analyzing both to see, but as of this point, I don't have a direct explanation, but I am looking at the data to try and see what happened. But I know that a good part of it is that our hosts have really refined their wrapping. Once again, I'm going to say that I think the limitation of very few pledge drive gifts and not talking about those anymore and going into depth about what people can get. Now that people are reinforcing the basic message of why you should give to WORT, not only does that help with our pledge drives, but it also is a message that donors are regularly hearing, and it's priming the pump when I send out direct mails for end of year and other things. They already have all those other messages in their head from hosts talking about them. So I think the pledge wrapping is better, but I think there's something else going on here that I want to see if I can figure out by analyzing the data. That's all.
Thank you. There are no action items in the music director report or the digital production director report or the news talk and public affairs report. Shally did an amazing job with the Pixie image issue, and we'll cover that further down in old business. She sent a long report to the board, and it's very useful. The volunteer and outreach report from Adrian has an action item to approve the purchase of 4 portable tent walls for $611.25. She explained in her report that those are used when we're out in doing event things. It blocks the sun for people who are sitting in those tents for hours on end. And it also protects us from rain when it starts to rain. And it also lets us close up the tent at night and leave it set up rather than having to take it down and put it up every day in a multi-day event. Is there any discussion of that expense?
How are these different from what you just having worked past fairs and things? How are these different from our current equipment, or what's the upgrade?
The tents we have now, hey, there's Adrian. Do you want to explain the tent walls and how they're different?
Yeah, well, we currently don't have any portable tent walls. What Glenn did get at the beginning of the pandemic were plastic sheeting walls, which kind of radiate heat. Like the sun sort of hits them and it'll like pinpoint heat into the tent. And they're a lot better for things like at the beginning of the pandemic when we needed a barrier between people. Right now, we don't really have anything other than maybe putting up a WORT banner to block the sun whenever it hits in an inopportune time. Sometimes we get stuck in areas at festivals where it just hits you all day. And I've been noticing for the past 2 summers that other tents have these portable walls, and it just seems to make everything so much easier. And I thought that, it's a one-time purchase, really. Like, we're not going to have to get more than this. And I have a good relationship with the Easy Up people, and they do replace things for free often. So.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Dean,
I move we authorize the expenditure.
Second,
stand by while I make notes.
And I might add, I think it's a smart idea. I've seen these things. I think it'll add a little class to the tent as well. You know, it's just a little visual upgrade.
I think so too. And I'm not sure if any of you have been there with the process of bringing the tent down in the evenings and hoping it doesn't rain and covering stuff in plastic sheeting, but then we don't have to worry about that at all. So that would be fantastic.
And I think it also could add for signage and display purposes. It's a good white background to put stuff up, so it'll help draw attention too, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
If there's no other discussion, all in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
I,
Rebecca,
Thank you.
did you say aye?
Yes, I did. I said aye.
Thanks. I'm sorry. Everyone's talking at once. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee report. We didn't get a written report, but Laura said she wanted to say something.
yeah, I wanted to solicit possible members for the DEI committee. We've had the work group running, and I wanted to try to ramp up a DEI committee. And I know that there was some interest expressed by members of the board before. I was wondering if we could repeat that. Are there members of the board who are interested in forming the nucleus, the seed for this committee? Please raise your hands.
I'd jump in at the beginning of this. That's Dean.
Thanks, Dean. I did remember you. I thought there was one other person. All right, it's a start. Thanks.
Stand by while I make notes. Next item on the agenda, I can't spell, sorry.
Dave, could I just point out the DEI report is in the folder and was submitted yesterday. It has yesterday's date on it.
Sorry, I didn't see it when I was preparing this.
Laura, I didn't know if you were going to raise it separately, so I didn't make it an action item of DEI, that you were going to raise the question of having a charter for the DEI committee. But that is in our report. I just didn't make it an action item because I thought you were doing it separately.
So we did create a charter last meeting.
I thought so.
I think the question was, I know that you were interested in the relationship between the DEI committee and the work group. That was not spelled out in the charter. And yeah, I was I knew that that was not covered in the charter and that was deliberate. The other thing is that it was requested at the work group meeting that we talk about the EEO representative. I believe that's Dave right now. But I think that the work group, the DEI work group, would like to see a female EEO rep, because they feel that most of the complaints that this officer deals with are complaints from women, and that women would feel more comfortable dealing with another woman. So I know Kai and myself had offered to bring it to the attention of the board, possibly Rebecca too, but I'm doing it now.
I'll get to your comment in a minute. So Laura, I have on 2 occasions in past board meetings asked for volunteers to be an EEO officer and gotten no volunteers. The further issue is that we are not required by any regulation to have an EEO officer. And so it is, and we're electing to do that, but we don't have any rules or policy for an EEO officer. What does that person do? What records do they keep? How do we handle privacy and confidentiality, and also the gender of the applicant? So we need to handle that. And just saying that someone is an EEO officer without any direction doesn't help much. I see a hand from Dean. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, we seem to be branching off again into an expanded conversation. And I would like to suggest a couple things here. Laura, if you wouldn't mind to be a temporary chair of a DEI committee where we would meet before the next board meeting to make some more specific proposals and address some of these issues that are particularly pertain to the establishment of the committee and the charter. And then we can come back a little to the next board meeting a little bit more informed, and the work and discussion that needs to happen around the formation of the DEI committee happens offline at a committee meeting and not be done here at a board meeting, which I have problems with doing committee work at board meetings. It extends the time of the meeting, and it doesn't really, I don't think it's proper form. So that's my first suggestion, is that we set up a DEI committee meeting of interested board members so that we could address some of these issues, prepare a report to the board that then the board can have a more informed discussion. And the second thing about the EEO thing, this is like the second issue, but there's 2 separate issues here. So if we want, so I don't know when you want to talk about that now. It's not on the agenda, but if you get brought up, we can talk about it, or we have an agenda item about it next month. And again, not do the work at a board meeting, but come prepared to discuss some proposals at a board meeting. So those are my 2 suggestions here. Whatever people feel about that.
Laura has a hand up, and then Susan had a question. Laura is muted. Oh, go ahead.
Too many buttons. So I apologize, Dean. I only wanted to request possible members who I could contact offline. The other questions were things that were included in the DEI work group minutes. And since we were having trouble producing those minutes, I brought them up without, that foundation. I don't know what action. I'm not asking for action from the board on the EEO officer. I just promised that I would bring it up as a board member at the meeting. And I'm trying to fulfill that promise. I would agree, by the way, Dave, that usually an EEO officer springs from some structure in the HR department. I kind of did a little research on that, and we really don't have any kind of structure for that. So it's going to take a bit of work to get an EEO officer. That's it.
Agreed.
Thanks.
Thank you. Susan asks, does it have to be a board member? We have no definition. We have no policy. So I can't affirmatively say, yes, it has to be a board member. But since it's not on the agenda, I don't want to bring this up for a big discussion right now. I can talk to you offline and tell you some of the research that I've done, but I don't want to take up a board meeting to do that.
Can I just ask one question?
Yes.
Can you guys give a directive to the DEI work group if you want us to prepare something that has to do with the EEO officer? Because I also have done a ton of research for this, and we can come back to you. WORT has had one. Steve Ringwood was one. We've had EEO officers here. So it has been a position that has been filled here. And if you ask DEI or you ask me, I can give the history. I can tell you what decisions they made and what they did. Yeah, Jane Richard was the EEO officer as well. So just if the board just wants to give not a long discussion, just give a directive to someone to prepare this.
I would like to actually send that to policies and bylaws and have them talk to you about that, because they're the ones who write policies. So I will talk to Stu offline and we'll start that. Doug, I see your note about harassment policy is posted. I agree. Harassment policy is not the definition of what an EE officer is and does and who it can be and how it's set up. So if there's no objection, this will has to be gone soon. I'm not sure if we can, we have some thorny issues to discuss and it's not going to be short. So that's why it's in old business and it's at the end, because it's going to take some time. So I'm sorry, there's too many things going on.
Thorny business, no pun intended, obviously. Regarding the WORT access hour I applied for, or
That's correct.
The appeal and all of that.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't read the agenda. I'm sorry. I just came to ask
Okay.
about the appeal, and unfortunately I have to go, but
Yep.
I thought it would be like last time's meeting. So I was just expecting to come and ask and have a little bit of a back and forth, but that's cool if you have a lot to discuss and everything. And I'm glad that you're talking about it, and I'd like to do the appeal. I'd
like to have an answer, but we don't have one yet. So
okay, cool. All right. Well, you all have a good night in the Mad City, and I will see you around town. Ciao.
okay. Thank you. Bye. All right. The next item on the agenda is the mural project report. I put that in the folder and linked it to the agenda. I don't think there's any action items there. Patrick gave an update of what's going on.
Yeah, I would like, yeah, if I
Go ahead.
could get a few minutes, David, yeah.
Please.
The one thing in February, we agreed to apply for a grant with neighborhoods. And there was something of a war effort for people to really put a proposal and a video together. And I know that was kind of rushed. So unfortunately, that didn't work out, but we have a nice, we were given a really good lead to go to the facade group, the facade improvement program, and their pockets are quite deep. And I've had discussions with them, and we will be asking the board for approval to go ahead with this grant application. So this is our single best bet to get some money. You know, to date, our expenses and budget are both zero, and so we're this is they have $10,000 grants that you can get, or they have matching grants up to $20,000 per street side. We have 2 street sides. This could be, you know, so that means if you could raise 40,000, they'd match it. It's all at the end of the project. It's a one-off only. They don't do anything. They don't want to do any of the accounting or anything during a project. They want it all at the end. So we're having a lot of discussions with them. How can we stick with our timeline where we do the exterior of the building and then the mural? But if we do this, if we go ahead with this, it does mean that WORT for a matching grant, we'd have to raise the rest or spend the money and then get it back, get it reimbursed. So it's a large outlay of cash in order to do that. So this is something I wanted to bring up. If anybody has any questions or obvious concerns, I'd rather hear them than next month we'll come and start asking, hey, can we go ahead with this grant with the facade Madison facade improvement from the Department of Planning. Is that clear enough, or do people need
for the board?
I'll sit. Yeah.
For the board, it would be great to have a document that says that there's going to be a cost of XYZ to do the project, and we expect a grant to cover this part of it, and Ward is going to have to come up with this much money. We can't just say, yes, go ahead, if we don't know how much it is.
Yeah. Just to that, okay, noted. I'll take that forward. The costs that we've got a fellow named Mark France, who is on the team, was a contractor with a lot of experience, and he will work up the building exterior costs. But then it will come down to our execution plan. If you went with a group like DAMA, the Dane Arts group, you know, we would use up a good bit of this. That you'd be closer, you know, it'd be something more like 40,000, 40 to 50, if we did all 3 sides, which I now think is impractical. I think just the 2 sides, and then do all the exterior. I can bring those options up, and we could cost both of them and lay it out. I think that's probably the best thing to do.
Thank you, Dean.
Yeah, I would just, I think before we decide on, I guess, how to go about paying for it, and the facade request, either one of those sounds like a good way to proceed. Let's try to narrow down an estimate of what the whole project's going to cost, and then we'll see if the matching grant is the way to go, or just a 10 grand one, and we can look at some numbers there and make a little bit more informed decision then.
think one of the, okay, I follow you there. Let me just add that we have not done any outreach in the community at this point yet. So we would like to approach a lot of other neighbors here who have not donated to WRT in the past, and businesses, and that is something that we would fundraise to try to come up with the other half of money. So I still would prefer not to impact the operating budget of WRT by taking this forward.
Right, we've had a discussion with, and Susan has mentioned there are some plans to approach certain fund grantors, and that we don't want to create a conflict by asking for two things. So we could coordinate with the fundraising of Susan's department on that once we get it together. But I think once we get a fairly decent ballpark figure what the total package will be, then we'll know where we got. Maybe we'll allocate some of our own funds without fundraising, and then come up with a fundraising strategy that doesn't impact our normal fundraising efforts. I think that's the way to go. But let's see if we can get a number.
Okay, yeah, we'll work on those for the next meeting.
Yeah, and I think then I think we can make some decisions on which is the best way to proceed.
Okay. Okay, I think one of the benefits also, if there are people, and is Tom still on here?
Yes.
If there are maintenance issues or exterior of the building that we need to take care of to upgrade. Before with a neighborhood grant, those were not included, but with a facade grant, if you want to look at that link, it shows, yeah, you can actually roll those things into your budget now. So if there's tuck pointing you have to do or maintenance, windows are included. Windows are a substantial upgrade, and those would be qualify for match. So things that an art grant might not touch at all. So,
very good. Very good.
Can I say one last thing? Susan, I'll talk to you separately about the issue with the one, let's see, which group was it with the conflict? The Madison Community Foundation. One of our members had a dialogue from the past there, one of the team members. And so there was some dialogue. So I'll check in with you separately from this meeting to make sure that we don't, that we're all in sync. I think that's about it from my end then.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Next item on the agenda is the unauthorized use of image lawsuit. Shally did an incredible job of research on that, way above and beyond. But what Shally was able to show is that Pixie has not actually taken legal action against more than about 2 people nationwide, if I read that report correctly. So the chances that they would come after WORT are not high. In past meetings, the WORT board has decided not to follow up with Pixie, and we're not proposing that the WORT board take any action now, but I would be very open to any suggestions or questions that people have.
Raise hand. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I couldn't find the raise hand. I think Zoom updated, so I couldn't see it anymore. But anyways, yeah, so my big thing is that I'm pretty sure I don't have the legal mandate in front of me right now, but I'm pretty sure that an organization needs to make a formal request for you to like cease and desist. And if they can only sue you after they've made the request and after a certain number of days have passed and you haven't complied with it. Like, we've clearly done that immediately. I remember reading that from Shally's report that we did it immediately the day after. And so there's really no cause for it. So I don't know, maybe we should look into that law and use that as like an immediate defense. I know that Shally did the legwork of finding out their lawsuit records, but I'm pretty sure if we remain in compliance with that based law, then they can't sue us. I'm not, we should find that ruling so that we just know our immunity outright, if we have the time, you know?
I see Laura has a hand raised.
So I don't know that that would grant us immunity, but I think that the fact that Shali's been very proactive in educating her staff and volunteers, and you know, that we've been very proactive to try and prevent stuff like this from happening. I think that goes a long way in showing our intent, were we ever to have to defend ourselves in court. I agree with her findings that you know, that we let this ride and not poke a what could be a hornet's nest. By paying anything, we're kind of admitting guilt. I think that this is a good thing, that to let it ride.
Yeah, and props to Shali as well. I will say that Shali's always been a good at finding out the laws. Thank you.
Any other discussion about that issue? Hearing none. The second item in old business is a reminder that we are being sued by two people in regard to the shooting at the station that took place on August 5th, 2018. The two suits have been consolidated into one and will go to trial in Dane County Circuit Court from July 10th to the 14th. That will be after the annual meeting and after new board members are elected and new officers are elected. My term ends at the end of June, and I can't guarantee that I will be reelected to the board. So we may need to, as a board, find out who is going to be attending that lawsuit in Dane County Circuit Court. So we'll have to be there for 4 days. So the next item on old business is a board staff retreat. At the last board meeting, we decided that I would and Doug would handle this. Doug has got too many issues on his plate, so Doug asked Tom to handle it, and that was agreed to at a staff meeting. Tom and I have talked in general about the board staff retreat and agree that it should be, well, we can't schedule something before the annual meeting, so it'll be something that happens after the annual meeting. And so Tom and I haven't gotten any further progress in that discussion because there are so many issues that are always going on. So we will continue to work on finding resources for that, trying to define what a retreat means. So I will be contacting individuals on the board who talked about that to get their suggestions, and we'll be talking to the staff to get their suggestions, and then we'll come back to the board for an approval process at the next meeting or beyond. So questions, discussion? You're making it too easy. Argue with me. Come on. This is WORT. What's going on here? The last item on old business is the Thistle-Pedersen appeal. Thistle had applied for a access hour. The staff unanimously declined to give her that, and Thistle has appealed. I asked the staff if there is any reason that the board should not hear that appeal, and the staff sent a long message. It's a copy of that is in the folder for tonight's meeting. Basically, the staff doesn't think that the board has the authority to hear that appeal. I am not bringing forth a recommendation or a motion. I'm bringing this issue for discussion to the Board of Directors. Do you think that the Board of Directors has the authority to hear an appeal? And how do you think we should proceed? If anybody has any thoughts or ideas.
Kai has his hand up.
I
Sorry.
figured out where the hand raise function was. It's under reactions now for me on the phone. Anyways, the reason why I just wanted a point of information. I think this point is in the bylaws, what does it say? I mean, it's kind of like we're asking a question. What happens when someone's given a ban? Who hears it? Is it not already listed out in the bylaws? Because it's kind of like you're asking us, what are the rules? Do we have, because if they're not written out already, then it's kind of like the Wild West. So I don't really like, shouldn't we be referring to bylaws for this?
There are no mentions of appeals in the bylaws.
So does staff think it's under their authority or like our purview, or is that what we're determining then? Like
Well, there's a long document in the folder about that.
Okay, I guess I got to read more.
The question is whether this issue is day-to-day operations or not. And the staff believes that day-to-day operations are the purview of the staff, and that this is a day-to-day operational question and they should handle it. I don't agree with that. I think that if somebody makes an appeal, the board can hear that appeal. I don't think the board, I'm trying to word this very carefully. The board should be very careful about what they do if an appeal is made and how they decide. The board doesn't want to get into the business of making programming decisions, but I think that the board has the authority to hear an appeal. Anyway, I will step down from my soapbox. I see Laura's hand up. Go ahead. Muted.
I think that the totality of this makes it, kind of kicks it up to the board level. And that is, the fact that it's a permanent total ban from the station. That, for one thing, it seems to imply that it is not a daily, day-to-day kind of an action. This is a lifetime ban from the station. I think that where it also spills into the purview of the board is that this could tarnish the reputation of the station. I think that questions of censorship and freedom of speech, things like that come into question. These things are especially important, of course, with with the radio station, with our mission. I just think that if Thistle wants to make this an example, she could probably do our reputation a bit of damage. And I think, we have to be very careful how we weigh this. I'm not certain myself that the punishment fits the crime, to be honest with you. That's my own personal opinion. I don't know what the opinion, of the public in general, of our listenership, of our sponsorship. I don't know what they would make out of it.
Further discussion?
I kind of separate these issues. I talked a lot with Amber about this, and I know that there's a lot of, we had a just offline discussion. I won't summarize anything, but I know there are a lot of issues with accessibility and giving people a voice for people that are normally not heard. There's a lot of LGBTQ issues that you could draw from. And I mean, that's the heart of what we stand for, is to give people accessibility. But what the thing that really stuck with me is I separate this, and this is somebody that you have to look also at how much that individual is willing to work with you and to work with the station. And I think that the functionality or the accommodating a voice, there's a reciprocal agreement or an obligation that you will also try to work with the station. And we gave Thistle a lot of airtime right at the front of the meeting last time, and there was a lot of discussion. She sent out a flyer after that, and we are bashed in there. There are a lot of the George Carlin 7 words in there that you can't say on the air that are specifically aimed at incidences in the station. And I think there's, from that standpoint, I have a hard time supporting this individual case. So, I mean, there's the soul searching part of this, which is the accessibility, but then there is someone who's willing and continuing to recant stories. They've got, there's that of hurtful things that are said, obviously hurt them. And these are written down and they're years old. I was amazed that that flyer would be sent around right after there was that much discussion. So I separate these issues, in my opinion, and so I can see why the staff would do what they did just to make a workable, to make the day-to-day operations workable here. People have to work with you to be on the to get airtime.
Patrick, do you have, can you make a copy of that flyer available to the board?
It was provided as in one of the chats, I think, or Dave, it was just one of the last, when we had Thistle on, she said, "Thank you very much. And by the way, here's my flyer."
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll look through the, I'll look through the
I'll see if I can, yeah,
okay.
I'll see if I can dig it out here.
Okay.
I can't recall if it was a chat or an after, right after our meeting, or I think it was actually while we were still talking about other business, there was a follow-up that she sent.
Okay. I see other hands and I have comments later too. So, but I'll go to Dean first.
Okay, I agree with what Patrick was saying about separating these issues. And I think in what we found out by her asking for an appeal, and then us discovering that we don't really have an official process to do it, that's my issue there. I think it stops right there. And I think what we need to do is, do I feel the board has a right to hear an appeal for someone that in a situation like this? Probably, but not until we get a process established and in the bylaws that accounts for it. So I think that's where I land right now. And as far as the decision that was made, it stays in operations, and we need to, if we want to pursue this potential problem and hearing an appeal again, that we create a policy for it, which is what a board should do. And I'm in favor of that part of it. And I don't see how we can legitimately act without a policy that says we're able to.
Thank you. Ty was next.
Yeah, just echoing Dean's sentiments. That's kind of what I was asking at the beginning of when I made my statement. I wanted to know like what was in the bylaws. So now, and then I was directed to read the letter, so which I have now found and now read. Yes, no, I do. When I read it, I kind of get the sense that maybe there's like I don't want there to be like a power struggle. So what I would hope is that there is a process for an appeal, but maybe it's not the board that hears it, because then if the board like gets the right to approve or deny whether or not the staff has the right to even make this ban, then I see where the problem lies there. I think that whatever decision ends up being made, it needs to be made in tandem with like the board and staff having a, you know, close to equal representative power in how that decision is finally being made. So it definitely needs to be more, definitely whatever the approach is, it needs to be more equitable, and the board can't be superseding, at least not like outright superseding exactly what the staff is saying. Maybe there should be there's whatever ends up being cited, there should be some sort of check and balance that exists there. At least that's what my opinion is.
Thank you. Laura's hands is next.
Yeah, I would like to see that flyer or missive, whatever form it took that happened after the meeting. I've not seen it. It might affect the way I feel on this, but if someone could produce that and post it, you know, put it in the Google Drive for the rest of us to read, I would like to see that. Thanks.
Thank you. Marty, your hand is next.
Yeah, I think part of the problem here is exactly what Dean said, is there's nothing instituted about hearing and an appeal. I also don't think this is a free speech issue, because free speech in the US Constitution applies to the government. Your boss can tell you that you can't say things at work, and that's not free speech issue. Courts have ruled on those kinds of things. So we need to come up with a policy, and that needs to be approved and part of the ruling documents of the board. But secondly, as a former employer and never having been a former employee and never having been an employer, I'm always leery about not listening to people who actually work on the front lines. And I think that this staff has some very valid concerns about the way she treats the station and the way she could treat them in the future. And I would be reticent right now to take this issue up without some kind of guidance by a document that has been gone through the proper channels and been approved and attached to the documents that govern the operation of the board. So that's basically what I have to say. I did read some document, and I can't remember whether Thistle sent it to me. I had 2 contacts in my life with Thistle. She brought up this idea that the last time she talked to the board that she knew me. I was the treasurer of an organization she wanted to join. She joined it, and then when she found out that most of the people in the organization didn't agree with her, she wanted me to revoke her membership and give her money back. And I did that as the treasurer. It was a voluntary organization. You can quit at any time. So those are the two instances that she said that she had some in a meeting that she had that she had known me before. That got me a little concerned about how she plays with the facts. I'm not accusing her of anything, but other than to say that she is stirred in my mind the truthfulness of what she says, especially after one of her first, one of the issues that drew the most concern is from years ago is how she came on and diverted the program into a discussion of her particular ideology in the group that she belongs to. So those are my comments.
Thanks, Marty. I see Kai's hand.
Yeah, back on that, I forgot the other part of what I was going to say, which was related to the fact that Thistle is free to say whatever Thistle wants to say. And I honestly don't think we should be concerned with that. I'm not saying that we shouldn't, for the purposes of like counter information, we should probably obtain a copy of that flyer just to know what's being said out there. Because
That's in there's a link to that in the chat right now. So
I can't view
Okay.
chats on this new version of Zoom on my phone. Anyways,
Okay.
thank you for pointing that out. I'm sure hopefully I can get that on email later at some point. But anyways, no, I don't know what the flyer says, but so yeah, we should have access to that for purposes of just knowing what's being said about us. But should we really be concerned about Thistle? Like if we know that we're doing everything right, then Thistle is the person that's basically throwing a tantrum over the fact that finally we're saying no to the antics that Thistle has presented to us. I don't really see why we should be concerned. I think that's a non-issue of concern for us, whatever Thistle wants to say. If we're very confident in how we've issued our denial, then we shouldn't really be concerned at all about whether or not she wants to appeal even, or whatever she's gonna say. I don't think we should spend so much time on that.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or discussions? I will take a moment to give you my opinion. In my opinion, the board is authorized to hear an appeal from somebody like Thistle. The action that the board takes is a different question. But I think that the board is the legal entity who an outside entity would come to, like, for instance, in the lawsuit, it goes to the board. So the board has the authority to act on this, even though it's not in the bylaws. It is in the bylaws that the board hires and supervises the full-time staff, but if the board were to hear this appeal, they would have to review the statements that were made by the board, by the staff, and make a decision based on that. But I'm not saying we need to do that. I am saying that that's my opinion. Any thoughts about what we should do? Adrian, even though you're not a board member, I will respond to your question. The board is defined in the Wisconsin statutes, and even though we don't have a procedure, for instance, how to handle a lawsuit, we have to handle it. One of the determinations, if the board were to decide to hear an appeal, is on what basis would they make a decision? So, Susan, I know that the board I don't know that the board has never heard an appeal from a non-staff, non-volunteer. She was a former volunteer, but in any case, the board has never responded to a lawsuit by people who were shot at the station, and we have to handle that. So I don't think we can write a policy for every instance that that comes up. Hang on a second, Rebecca. I will try to respond to hi.
Adrian says she sent him the link.
Yeah, I just want to say, thank you, Adrian.
Okay.
This new version of Zoom is messing with me.
Rebecca's hand was next.
I was just going to kind of sum up what it sounds like. It kind of like at this point, because there isn't anything written about an appeals process, we really aren't set to have one. So if maybe a determination of saying to her, we aren't going to hear an appeal at this time. And then if the policy changes, and then we make the determination if we want to reach out to ask for or say, hey, we've made a policy and we're willing to hear your appeal. But I feel like kind of what Dean was saying and what everybody else was saying is if there's not really a process on how that's done or what can be done with the information, I think it's best to at least give her an answer of saying, not right now, the decision is what it is. If that changes, then we can move forward. But at least she has something and then we have something and then we can proceed with it in like a documented manner or some sort of an outline to go with it. That's just my thought.
Thank you, Rebecca. I see a hand from Susan. Go ahead.
This isn't any kind of, the board can do what the board wants to do. But when you're going to open the door to say, and this isn't opening the door to say the board will hear from the public who has a problem with the decision made by a staff member at WORT, which basically you're not distinguishing because there's no policy set up, you're not distinguishing it in any way. So if somebody wants to overturn a decision of the programming committee for them to be a DJ, or somebody wants to overturn any number of decisions that are made by staff or committee without a policy in place of how you're going to do that and what will be heard or not heard, you're really opening the door to possible discrimination claims that this person wasn't permitted to appeal and this person was. So I'm firmly behind working on a policy and hopefully having some kind of input from staff and board discussing together, because while the board has to address a lot of things, Dave, most of our appeal processes have a policy and explain how that will be handled. And yeah, we can fly off our, the seats of our butt on coming up with something and doing it that way. But I really think precedent deserves a little bit more consideration in this case. And I feel like the rest of the board seems to be either in favor of leaving the staff decision as it is or coming up with a way to distinguish between people who would be coming to the board and saying, we're appealing a decision that was made by someone else.
Thank you, Susan. I see two hands, but before that, I would like to make a comment. I think there are two issues. Number one, does the board have the authority to hear an appeal? Number two, if the board hears an appeal and decides to overturn or modify anything that the staff has decided, that's a different situation. So number one, hearing the appeal. Number two, taking action. So
I would say there's like a 1.5 there. How
Okay.
the board hears the appeal, which would be, I say, includes staff as a check and balance to that review, because I don't like the idea of the board just superseding exactly what the staff says, or at least not outright.
all right, Dean, next.
Yeah, I think Rebecca was pretty much kind of pushing us more in the direction that I'd like us to go. And so I think the board has a right to hear an appeal or a complaint from someone who feels that they haven't been treated fairly? Absolutely. And it's a similar situation where if we get sued, the board has to respond. And but there's a little difference there. It's codified that if a board gets sued, we have our fiduciary responsibilities to defend ourselves and get lawyers. And the other, now this one is something that is a structural omission on our end. Susan, can you turn yourself off or something? Anyway, what I'm thinking the way to resolve this is to establish an appeal policy for someone who feels aggrieved. That's a volunteer or someone in an access denial that would encompass these things, and then we'd have a framework to act on. So until we get that thing, I don't know how we can appropriately respond in this way by setting up an ad hoc appeal thing. I think it has to be much more formal. And this is not to say at all on whether I agree with the decision or not. I think what is pointed out is that we're spending so much time on this is because we don't know how to go forward. And so I think that's the question, and let's address that. And then, as Rebecca said, once we have that format, we can decide on what to do about Thistle actual ask of us, what we should do then once we have it set up. And yeah, it might take a while. In the meantime, everything stands and stays the same. The decision stays until we set up a process. And if we decide to have a full hearing on that appeal, once the process is set up, and then that's a decision we make at that point. But right now, I don't feel comfortable with hearing appeal. But David, I agree with you. I think the board has a right to hear an appeal. Let's just set up a process to do it.
Thank you. Laura.
I think that it's appropriate for us to explore this in depth. I think this is a very important decision for the board to be a part of and for a process to be in place. I want us to be very open with Thistle because it seems to me that we've kind of promised her an appeal.
We've promised her a response, but not an appeal. So.
Okay, yeah, so thanks for clarifying that. Yeah, I just don't want to give her any more ammunition, if you will, saying that we've been leading her on. So, thanks.
In the past, after the Y2K problem, we had a number of people who wanted to do programs about the 9/11 conspiracy theory stuff. And we did a couple of shows on that, but we don't entertain those anymore because they're rehashing the same things over and over again and not bringing up any new information. The board wasn't involved in any of those decisions. The staff made the decisions to not support those kind of shows either on a public affair or on Access Hour. If we believe that this was a routine decision on the part of the Access Hour coordinator, that it doesn't fit what we want to do, that's a different thing. That isn't the justification used in this case. But the justification that was used in this case was the threat of vandalism. We have in the past banned people from the station who, because of issues like violence or theft or whatever, and the board wasn't involved in those decisions. And also nobody brought an appeal to the board to appeal those decisions. So I'm not saying anything of substance here, sorry. I understand that the desire to wrap this discussion up because we're not really coming to a conclusion of any kind.
Is there some action we can take tonight?
We could ask policies and bylaws to come up with an appeal process, but I think that I'm not sure that would be fruitful.
I think we should ask them anyway.
All right,
If they have problems with it, then they can come back and tell us.
A point of information, who's on the Policy and Bylaws Committee?
I don't know right now except for Stu.
It's
So
Stu. Yeah, I know Stu is on it. That's the only one I know.
I
I
will,
believe Sybil is as well.
I will take that. Adrian says, Shelley, Sybil, and Adrian, so are on the policies and bylaws. Do we require a motion to refer to policies and bylaws, or do we just ask in our meeting to do that?
I believe the president has the authority to be able to do that.
I'll take that as a yes. I'll put that in the minutes to the meeting later. So
Yeah, and Rebecca just sent a little notice that I think it's okay to communicate that some formal letter that explains that this, so that there is not a this example is as pointed out, that there's not a process for formal appeal. We are actually in the process of setting that up, and once we have that figured out, she can review it and decide what to do then. Something along those lines. That's at least I think we do owe her a response. That's not respectful.
yes,
And I think that she will be here frequently at these meetings asking for the same thing. So I believe we do owe her a response also.
Yeah, and let's remember that at the beginning of the meeting, there's a process of our board meetings where we hear from the public, and then we have a 3-minute window where they can make a statement to us, and that they can't participate in any other further conversations. They can give us a statement, even hand in something written down if they don't go all the way through it, but there's a timed period of time where they can address us, and that's usually at the beginning of the meeting.
yep. Thank you.
Actually, Dean, during discussion, the president can recognize a member of the public in the discussion of any item.
Yeah, if the president chooses, right?
Actually, any board member can do that, but yes,
You're right. The bylaws say that a board member can ask a response from someone who's more intricately involved
Yep.
in the.
Right. We can also lend the floor to a member of the public if we so choose as a board
Right.
member. So you can yield to a member of the public. So yeah, in a sense, any of us can do it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, if it's appropriate, it's just they just can't raise their hand and expect to be called on.
yep. Rebecca,
Does that have to be put into like a motion request to move to actually make that decision then?
The decision about sending it to the bylaw, to the policy committee?
Yeah, like moving to give her an answer that it stands, but until policies can be determined, something to that effect.
Well, I think it's.
I think we can just ask the president to do that. Because she's asked us for some action, and the president is a spokesperson. We can ask the president to send her a response and explain what's going to happen.
if there's no objection, I will take Rebecca's suggestion from the meeting chat to say that the decision stands until we define a policy for how to handle an appeal. Give me a head nod or a hands up or something if that's okay with you.
Sounds good. And then I don't know if we need any mention or not in there, something like what Dean was saying, how we do not have a specified time frame. So that doesn't mean by next meeting, it means as soon as policies have been decided. So the board we just have to work on it. Okay.
Great. Wonderful.
It could go as long as the Dane County Jail. Little levity to try to.
Thank you.
Or the convention center.
Yeah, or the South Belt Line.
Stop, you're killing me. Is there any new business to discuss?
I have something. I wanted to note the passing of a longtime volunteer and a friend who I made at the station. Ellen Lalacerne passed away on Friday. A lot of you are already aware of it, but she was a special person to me and a hard worker. So, bon voyage.
Yeah.
Ellen was involved with the radio station since the beginning. And is one of those people who I thought was always going to be here. So when we lose a volunteer, a longtime volunteer, it hurts. So thank you very much for bringing that up. Dean.
Yeah. Let's do something like we didn't do before. Let's do something more formal. At least flowers or if the family is needing some money to help with this or something. Let's do something more formal. If someone can find out if the family needs something, or at least send her a really nice card and a bouquet of flowers with it, something like that, you know.
Very good. I will talk to staff about that.
And I have one other separate issue.
Yes.
I would like us to put on the agenda next month a discussion around having in-person meetings in some type of hybrid fashion. I think December's coming up and COVID stuff is beginning to reduce. It's changing, and I just find it more helpful for me to be in a meeting with people. So I'd like us to discuss that next. If we can think about it now and then decide if we want to go forward with that.
On the May agenda. Thank you for waiting while I try to scroll out my notes. I will do so. Other new business. Laura.
It just occurred to me that we've gone through this entire agenda. Was there anything about the annual meeting that needed to be discussed tonight?
We approved the date last month.
And everything else is underway then?
Yeah, I could just chair, or Doug has spent a lot of work on getting the information out for the board seats that are open. The application process is going to begin, and so that's all been set up, and that's really one of the main things that happens at the board meeting, along with some reports. And again, I guess maybe we should talk. Well, I amend my first comment about having open board meeting, hybrid meetings, including if we should do that with the annual meeting, which we used to have in the past. We'd had pizzas and stuff there, and so I guess at the next board meeting we should decide if we should keep it open or a hybrid a system as well. So not for that I'd like to amend mine to make it including the annual meeting. We should decide that by next month.
Thanks, Dean.
And that was June 26th, correct? Or 25th,
That
maybe?
doesn't give me a whole lot of time to find a venue.
Maybe we could do some preliminary work on that and not lock it in, but we find something available. But yeah, I get it. So, but and if
I'll put out feelers now, and we'll see what happens.
yeah, if it's if it proves to be difficult, then we don't do it. And, but at least a board meeting, we can, there are two separate meetings, the big one, and then our regular ones. We can determine that next month.
Yeah, I was going to say that, Doug was already busy and deferred the staff retreat because he was busy. Maybe we can, I don't know, hold off on that. I don't know. How busy are you, Doug?
Well, I mean, I have to deal with the annual meeting, no matter whether it's virtual or live, but I'm just saying, if we want to get a venue for a live annual meeting, I should start making the asks of venues now.
Okay.
Whether or not we decide to go forward next month, I mean, we can always pull, because we're still a month and a half out. But to do the initial ask, I should be starting to do that soon. And I can start the ask this week. Just WORT-Stack's really consuming me right now. I'm a month out, so I hope y'all can make it to WORT-Stack. Oh, and I guess one other side note about that is I may need some help from a couple of friendly board members to help me carry cash and put it in the safe from the beer ticket sellers. So
what's the date on that?
If anyone's interested, it's Sunday, May 21st. Contact me if you're interested in doing that specific task for WORT-Stack. It would be about a 3 or 4 hour shift. I split it in half between 2 board members, so there'll be an early one and a late one. And I like to use board members because it's a lot of cash.
Yeah, I'll be out of town. Sorry, mate.
Oh, rough, dude.
All right, thank you. Other
Doug,
discussion?
Do it again.
Repeat?
Doug, I could do that duty again.
Sweet. Excellent. You're already trained.
Yes.
Nice. I might even get Stu to take a shift too again. So, we may be covered, but I'll let you know by email if I still need help when we get closer.
Very good. Other discussion? The president would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's not 11 o'clock.
Oh, I remember that last one. Yep.
So that was Marty who moved?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Good night.
All opposed? Let me hear opposals. Come on. It's not even 11 o'clock yet. Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, Ted.